Oh my God, it's the coolest thing ever. Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? Well, check this out. It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. Seriously. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back for our final segment of The Roger Stone Show. We are now joined by former four-term Congresswoman, 2020 presidential candidate, and New York Times bestselling author Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard is a veteran with 3 deployments in war zones in the Middle East and Africa. She served in Iraq and Kuwait with distinction. She has served the country in uniform for more than 20 years. She's currently a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. She was a 4-term member of Congress, a former co-chairman of the Democrat Party, who has left that party and explained it in an extraordinary book, For Love of Country. Essentially, Leave the Democrat Party Behind is her book. I urge you to read it. My good friend Tucker Carlson, I think, summed this up when he said, Tulsi Gabbard is one of the bravest people in the United States, and if you doubt that, consider what she's lost for telling the truth about some of the most powerful people in the world. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for joining us on The Roger Stone Show.
Thank you, Roger. It's great to be with you.
So you are a shrewd observer of politics, as well as someone who speaks their mind and does so, I think, with great courage and bravery. You're also the last person to engage Kamala Harris, who seems to be now anointed in an entirely non-democratic process, despite the fact that nobody voted for her for president. The powers that be in the Democrat Party, indeed the deep state, if you will, seem to have anointed her. I think a good place to start here is by listening to your extraordinary exchange with her in the 2020 Democrat presidential debates. Let's play that.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death. Courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling.
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people. You actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Epic television. So, Tulsi Gabbard, tell us about the selection of Kamala Harris. What's happening in today's Democrat Party? This process in which apparently in a bloodless coup, Joe Biden has been pressured, I think, to step aside for a woman whose entire record and past and very being the media is working overtime to reinvent, even as we sit here. What's going on here?
Oh, quite frankly, Roger, none of this should surprise us at all. The Democrat Party, unfortunately, and again, I have seen this and experienced this myself, and it's one of the reasons why I left the Democrat Party, is they don't believe, not only do they not believe in democracy, they will not hesitate to actively undermine our democracy, both within the Democrat Party politics, but as we've seen play out in a very brazen way over this election, in doing so in the country. And we have talked about this, and you have talked about this over and over, and how they have weaponized the Department of Justice and law enforcement to try to tie up Donald Trump in court or in jail. They wish he was in jail. They try to remove his name from the ballot in over 32 states to prevent us as voters from even having the option to vote for him. And we're only stopped in doing so, thankfully, by a unanimous decision by the Supreme Court. So the evidence is very clear that they are willing to destroy our democracy. We look back to 2016. I was vice chair of the DNC, and I saw how the chair of the DNC and that whole machine, the Democrat elite machine, rigged the primary for Hillary Clinton. Even Donna Brazile, who was a co-vice chair of the DNC, talked about this and wrote about this in her book. You fast forward to 2020. I experienced firsthand about how the Democrat elite, their friends in the mainstream propaganda media and in big tech, they all work together to choose the candidates that they wanted voters to choose from. And Kamala Harris was front and center within that small group. And for the rest of us, who they deemed as unacceptable to them, not to voters, but to them, because they knew, for me, for example, I was someone who they could not control. So they did everything that they could to try to cancel me and smear me and destroy my reputation and undermine my credibility and launch these media blackouts and just pretend that I wasn't even running for president. Fast forward to here where we are in 2024. They did their very best to try to prevent there from being a Democratic primary in this election. They canceled primary elections in some states. In other states, they wouldn't allow the candidates who were seeking to challenge Joe Biden in a Democrat primary. They wouldn't even let them have their names on the ballot. Once again, taking the right of voters, even Democrat primary voters, away from them so that they, the Democrat elite, the people who are unelected, could pick and choose who they want to be their figurehead that they can continue to control, just as they have with Joe Biden over these last 3.5 years. And clearly they have settled now on Kamala Harris as the new figurehead to replace Joe Biden. The big takeaway from all of this, Roger, is none of us as voters should be distracted by the political theater that is going on in the Democrat Party. We should know for certain that the policies will not change. The very same people who have been making the decisions behind the scenes on both domestic and foreign policy, who none of us elected, are going to continue to make those decisions and call the shots.
You raised an excellent point. We saw them beginning on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who initially announced his candidacy within the party of his uncle, John F. Kennedy, and his father, a former attorney general and New York U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy. But they told him that if he competed in the New Hampshire primary, which wasn't sanctioned, that his name couldn't be on the ballot in South Carolina and other subsequent contests. It was the same kind of rigging we saw done by the party to stop Bernie Sanders, who was a populist progressive Many Sanders voters ended up voting for Donald Trump, almost a third, because when it came to war and trade, they agreed more with Trump than they did with Hillary Clinton. I specifically remember, Tulsi, that Hillary Clinton saying that because you don't support endless war, where our inherent national interests are not even remotely clear, that you're not just incorrect, that you were a Russian asset. She called you a Russian traitor. This is beyond belief. This is gaslighting to the nth degree.
Yes, this is true. And it's also important to note that not a single time was she ever questioned about making that extreme and baseless accusation. No reporter asked her for evidence. No one asked her, well, give us examples, concrete examples of how Tulsi Gabbard is who you say she is. And oh, by the way, I just want to remind people that she accused me of being a traitor to the country that I love and I'm willing to lay my life down for, at a time where I still served in the United States Congress. I served on the Armed Services and Foreign Affairs committees. I had access to the highest levels of intelligence in our country. I still serve in uniform in the Army, as I did then, as I do now. And that if she had some basis for this accusation, and if she was serious about it, then she would have pursued it. And what she accused me of is a crime punishable by death under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That's how serious it is. But as you know very well, this is one of the many tactics that they use against their political opponents to try to silence us, to try to make an example out of us, to strike fear in the hearts of anyone else who may have a passing thought of challenging their power. Just because that came from Hillary Clinton, we shouldn't think that, oh, well, Hillary Clinton's not in power anymore and she's not relevant. No, she is one of these people who is in the deep state who is making decisions. She is the Democrat elite. She is the queen of woke warmongers. It is her. It is people like Jake Sullivan, who has been her lieutenant for decades. It is people like Tony Blinken, who has been Joe Biden's lieutenant for decades. There are many others who are profiting off of the military-industrial complex, those who are gaining more power in the national security state the longer we are in a state of counterproductive regime change wars that undermine our own country's national security interests. So all of these things that we're talking about, really we're talking about a Democrat Party that does not believe in freedom, that does not believe in the Constitution, and will undoubtedly continue to get us into more of these costly, counterproductive regime change wars that, once again, it's not even ambiguous about whether or not they serve our country's interests. They don't. They actually undermine our national security interests, and they undermine our economic interests. They are not in the interests of the American people. They only care about themselves and their power. And this will continue. If the Democrat elite are allowed to win in November, this will continue as it would have if Joe Biden was on the top of the ticket, and it will continue if Kamala Harris is elected as president.
5 immersive worlds, 1 amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe opens May 22nd at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The Four Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The Four Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
I think anybody listening or who has followed me knows that I was among those who said that I thought you should be vetted and considered as a vice presidential candidate. I'm that impressed with your courage and your record and your qualifications, particularly when it comes to stepping up against the war machine. That was not to be. And, well, as President Richard Nixon, my mentor, used to say, always look forward, never look back. Now, President Trump has selected J.D. Vance for vice president. You see a media assault on Vance today. These reports that Trump is unhappy with Vance are untrue. The stories that he's going to replace her with a globalist warmonger, Nikki Haley, are completely and totally untrue. That's the epitome of fake news. Tell us your assessment of the choice of Senator J.D. Vance.
Look, I endorsed J.D. Vance when he ran for the U.S. Senate in 2022. I don't know him personally very well, but I have been impressed with his having the courage and the backbone to stand up against the military-industrial complex in the short time that he's been in the U.S. Senate. There are many neocons and neolibs that are in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. And the fact that these neocons and neolib warmongers are freaking out because President Trump chose him as his running mate, I think is a good sign for those of us who cherish peace and security and freedom.
I agree with that. Look, it has been pointed out that he was once critical of Donald Trump. Well, if Donald Trump only gets the votes of those who were for him when he first ran in 2016, he won't win this election. But people change when they get more information. And as you point out, J.D. Vance has an actual record now in the U.S. Senate where he has stood up against the war machine. He's expressed grave concerns about shipping billions more to Ukraine. He's expressed concerns about the fact that we have no peace talks, no ceasefire negotiations. We're not even having a discussion, scuttled not by the Russians, not by the Ukrainians, but by our State Department. He's 39 years old. That's the same age Senator Richard Nixon was when he was tapped to be vice president by Dwight Eisenhower. I do think as a campaigner, he still has to get his sea legs, but he has a compelling personal story to tell. He comes from humble origins. He comes from a working class, blue collar, rural background. He's an entrepreneur like you. He served his country in Iraq. Don't attack him because he has stepped forward where Kamala Harris never has. The assault on him tells me that they're afraid that even the changing dynamics of this race, with Kamala Harris being a woman, no, Trump is not going to swap him out, and I think he will prove over time to be an asset to this ticket. I was happy that the president was not talked into choosing someone who was a neocon. This outdated idea of balancing the ticket with people who don't agree with you, it's not how this needs to be done. We need someone who truly, honestly supports the America First, anti-war machine, anti-globalist agenda. That turned out to be J.D. Vance. Folks, you're listening to The Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. We're with Tulsi Gabbard, a woman of enormous courage, and we'll be right back.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back to the Roger Stone Show here at 77 WABC Radio. Folks, now would be a great time to go to the App Store and download the 77 WABC Radio app so you don't miss any of the great programming here on the most dynamic AM radio station in America. We're talking to Tulsi Gabbard. She is the author of For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. It's an extraordinarily compelling read that lays out in great detail her evolution. People in politics or in life who don't change their mind when they get additional information, those are not the people I want leading us. Tulsi Gabbard explains her political odyssey and why she believes what she does and why she has emerged now as a major critic of the party that elected her, or under whose banner, I should say, she was elected to Congress, as well as the Hawaiian state legislature. She also has served her country as a combat veteran in Iraq and Kuwait. She retains the title of Lieutenant Colonel even today in the U.S. Army Reserve. She's also an avid sportswoman, shooter, and surfer, and we're honored to have her with us today. How do you assess this election? The Democrat Party is trying the big gaslighting media buildup, trying to make Kamala Harris something that in terms of just talent and positions, just to me, seems so fraudulent. But there seems to be a rush to get questions regarding the attempted assassination of Donald Trump out of the news, to get any halo of what I thought was a very good Republican convention out of the news, to now focus on the selection of a Democrat who would run for vice president. How do you think this election will look going forward, recognizing that it's a hard question because we're in the eye of the storm, and the Democrats have not yet had their convention. They don't yet have a legal nominee, but how do you see the general election stacking up?
Well, we're gonna continue to see exactly what you just pointed out is a whitewashing of Kamala Harris's record and a revisionist history being written about exactly what kind of person she is and what kind of president she'll be. It's going to be important for us to keep reminding people of the truth. And people need to realize Kamala Harris would be an even worse president from the country's standpoint than Joe Biden, because she's rooted in an ideology. She is an ideologue, and she's rooted in an ideology that's far more extreme than Joe Biden and anything that he has ever stood for. There are two very glaring and obvious and serious examples, one being the border. Obviously, President Biden, one of the first things, it was the first thing that he tasked her with was border security. Well, let's look at what Kamala Harris, obviously she failed disastrously at securing our border, but there's a reason for that. It's not just incompetence. It's the fact that when she looks at our illegal immigration crisis, and even though she hasn't been willing to say that out loud, what she really believes is that the problem is not our secure or unsecure borders, our open borders. The real problem is poverty and crime in other countries. And so she believes that before we can succeed in securing our borders and dealing with this illegal immigration crisis, we have to basically go and defeat poverty and crime, not only in Central and South America, but throughout the world, because we have people traveling to our open borders from around the world and coming across them illegally. Second, the thing that we should be very concerned about as Kamala Harris is yet again touting that she will be a prosecutor president, just like she did in 2020, is recognize at a practical level, what does that actually mean? As we've seen over these last 3.5 years, she will not hesitate to weaponize our Department of Justice and law enforcement agencies to go after those that she deems as real or perceived political opponents, those who pose a threat to her power, those who get in the way of her getting whatever it is she wants. You look at what's happened over the last 3.5 years, Kamala Harris will be that times 10. making what we've seen so far in the brazen abuse of power coming from the Democrat elite seem like child's play. Those are just two of the many issues that we should be concerned about in our country, about what kind of president Kamala Harris would be and how dangerous she would be for our country, our freedom, our ability to live in a peaceful and prosperous society and to truly live free.
It's extraordinary that Kamala Harris actually attacked Joe Biden, called him a racist in the Democrat debates because of his authorship of the 1994 crime bill, which is the first time that the war on drugs was now focused not on drug cartels or drug traffickers or drug kingpins, but on the end users. It is the 1994 crime bill that required the harsh mandatory penalties for the first time non